under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just in time.
Thank you. Keith, would you take roll, please?
Certainly. Mike Mitchell. Sue Grissom.
Here.
Joe Kalani.
Here.
Jeff Newsom. Larry Fox.
Here.
Tom Murphy.
Here.
All right, thank you. Next up, item 4, approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Kalani, second from Commissioner Grissom. Are there any changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, approval of our October 25, 2018 meeting minutes.
So moved.
I'll support that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Grissom, second from Commissioner Voigt. Are there any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, item 6, call to the public. Anyone have anything they'd like to come up and say this evening? No? Okay. We'll close call to the public. We have no public hearing this evening, so we'll move right along to item 8A, which is a site plan application number 18-005. This is for a Checkers walk-in freezer. Is there anybody here for the applicant? Yeah, if you'd like to come forward, have a seat. What we're going to do is have Troy introduce the proposal to us, and then we'll turn the floor over to you and introduce yourself at that time, and we'll go from there. Troy?
Yeah, thank you. Checkers Restaurant. I'm going to try to find where this is at here. Let me go with this. Checkers Restaurant is fairly new to Hartland Township. It was earlier this year that Checkers came in and had a site plan review to renovate what was Taco Bell next to the BP gas station. This is an aerial map. This would be Highway 23 going north and south, and this would be 59 going east and west, and it would be just south of 59, very near that intersection. This is the property. Checkers is this portion of this building, and the other portion of it is the gas station. What they did in earlier this year, they came in, they renovated it, they updated the exterior and got it ready for use. And now they are requesting to have a walk-in freezer in the back portion. The walk-in freezer would be as a detached unit that would sit on the ground behind the restaurant. Under our ordinances, that walk-in freezer by itself isn't permitted. It has to either be inside of a building or enclosed with a fence or screen wall that matches the building. So what they are proposing is to install, not that one. They're proposing to install a screen wall, and this would be a diagram of that would screen that walk-in freezer. There would be one change from the diagram that you're seeing here, and that is this screen wall will wrap around it. I've identified it in the staff report. It will wrap around 2 feet, extend back towards the wall 2 feet, and then Alan Balin has said this will be painted to match the building as well. The building is made out of the EIFS, that's a stucco drive-it material. Generally, that's not a permitted building material for the entire wall such as this. It's only permitted at the top cornice or just certain architectural features on the building. It's not permitted as the primary building surface material. However, since that is what the building is, and since they're trying to match that, that's what this is made of as well. So this would be EIFS stucco. It would extend and wrap around the walk-in freezer. It would be tall enough to not only screen the freezer, but any appurtenances that sit on top of that freezer. And the approved landscape plan shows landscaping in this area. They intend to just reinstall that in the other areas just outside of that. So I'm leaving a lot of details that I outlined on the size and height and stuff. That's all in the staff report. I'm just kind of glossing to give you a general overview of what the project is. But if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer.
Great, thank you. Now, if you'd like to introduce yourself, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, good evening. Seth Hirsch, Marketing Manager for IB Corporation, owner of the Checkers on 10440 Highland Road. Just, I guess, to touch points on the redistribution of the plants. We'll be moving them to an island just off to the right or in front of that there. There's a kind of almost bare island we'll be redistributing plants to, and as well as an island you will see that are between the drive-through and the roundabout that we'll be adding plants in as well.
Very good.
I have very vague information, so I apologize if you have questions. I don't know if I'll be able to answer them.
All right. Well, why don't we do our typical take a look through at the staff letter. This should be a rather quick review through. The staff letter I have is dated December 13, 2018. And if we begin on packet page 11, down about a third of the way, we see site plan review. We're going to get through this rather quickly because, again, we're just talking about a freezer enclosure versus a whole building. We've already described the site where it is. No impact assessment obviously required on this. No additional traffic not required on this. Site plan requirements, the building itself and all that went through the process as pointed out in the letter. And the next item up, architectural building materials. Troy has pointed out the enclosures need to match the building. The building's made out of this material. Would only make sense to have it be the same material, although it wouldn't be approved today from the word go. We're dealing with an existing facility. Now I'm on packet page 12. The applicant just described what's going to happen with the landscaping there. We're not getting any concerns out of any of our reviewing agencies, whether it be DPW, the township engineer, or the fire authority. Are there any questions for the applicant?
So I did have a question, and that would pertain to the size of the freezer. And so the space between the freezer and the screen, obviously the fire department has approved that distance. Do you have any idea how much space there will be?
I'm not actually for certain. I know it's going to be attached, from what I'm told, is with an L brackets on the top. Other than the space, I don't believe I have that here. So no, I can't provide you with that information.
I was just curious if that's something the fire department, the fire marshal looks at for egress, if there's room for someone to squeeze in there, just to confirm there's not like an egress issue there or a safety issue. That was just something that I had noted.
So I can comment a little bit on that. I think the walk-in freezer is about 8 feet wide, and the slab it's on is about 9 feet wide. And there's the wall itself they're building is partially on that slab. The thickness of that wall is, I don't know, 8 inches, something to that effect. So there's not much room in between this walk-in freezer and the building. I don't think it's enough you could get in between there.
And so that was my only real concern, was for safety there. If someone could find their way in there and then, you know, maybe be stuck or something like that, you know. Yeah, unique question, but yeah.
Okay, any other questions? If not, on packet page 12, about halfway down, you'll see that there is a recommended motion from staff.
We probably don't need the extra comments. Do we have any conditions?
We don't have any conditions, no.
I move to approve site plan application number 18-005, a request to install a walk-in freezer and a screen wall to the rear of the existing Checkers restaurant with drive-through service in an existing tenant space at 10440 Highland Road. And approval is subject to the following conditions, which doesn't appear to be any, so.
So moved. Or support.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Voigt, second from Commissioner Blaney. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Next up is item 8B. This is site plan application number 18-006. This is a shared driveway located on Fenton Road. Is there anybody here? If you'd like to come forward, you can. We may have a question or two for you. We'll do the same thing. We'll turn the floor over to Troy Langer, our planning director. He'll introduce the project, and then you can add anything you'd like to.
Okay,
All right?
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Troy?
Yeah, let me kind of clear these out of here. So I am going to start with, this is a zoning map of the township. And of course, the main obvious features are 23 going north and south, and then 59 going east and west. This property is on Fenton Road in essentially the northwest portion of the township. So we're going to be up in this area here of the township. This is Zone CA, conservation, agriculture. The minimum lot size requirements are 2 acres and 200 feet of lot width. What I'm going to do is pull up this is a survey of the proposed shared drive that they're looking to do. It also shows a proposed new boundary line. They desire to split this property. So this is Fenton Road over here. There's an existing home that sits right here. This is a 10-acre piece. It's a little over 10 acres. What they want to do is divide this. Ultimately, this would be divided right about in the middle, and then this front parcel A would be developed as a single-family home down the road. But in order to divide this, they need to have either a private road or a shared drive. A shared drive only permits 2 homes to have access on it. They only intend to have 2, so they're proposing a shared drive that would come in, have a slight bend to it here, and then has a T, I'll call it a T or semi-T turnaround here. And this shared drive would comply with our standards for width as well as the turnaround. The fire department's looked at this and they're okay with it. There was one slight caveat to this. The thickness of the gravel, our requirements are 6 inches. They had drawn their plan with, I want to say 7 inches. So after they saw the staff report, they asked if they could go to 6 inches, and our attorney has no, or not attorney, our engineer, our attorney could care less what the gravel is. Our engineer had said that, yeah, that's fine. So that would probably be one request, that the applicants are asking to be a slight variation from what you see before you. So other than that, I'll be available for any questions you might have.
All right. Would you like to introduce yourself and anything maybe you'd like to add?
Troy did a good job of explaining it. This is my daughter, Julie Deal. She's actually owns the property at this point. I'm her dad, obviously. And my wife and I want to build a house on the front so we can live on the same property as our grandchildren. So in order to do that, Troy told us when we first came and talked to him before we bought the property that we were going to need to do this driveway. So we're just walking down that path to get a new home. So.
All right, great. As we did with the previous applicant, we do have a staff letter here dated December 13th. Geez, Troy, there's more questions on a shared driveway than there is a... But that's the ordinance, and we'll run through this real quick. So I'm starting on packet page number 36, about halfway down, standards for a shared driveway. And just so we make sure everybody understands, we've gone through it all, we'll run through it, and and get that recorded in the minutes here, that our first item, Section 2 of the ordinance, the proposed shared driveway will only serve 2 single-family properties. That's a requirement of, and they're meeting that requirement. Section 5.2, the driveway also complies with all of the district requirements, so we're good there. And then we have Section 5.23.3.8.II, and you're going to be required to get a permit from the Livingston County Road Commission. We're not thinking there's any problems, as the staff letter shows, because there was already a driveway there.
We had them do a preliminary site review, and they said there was no problems.
Yeah.
I have a copy of that. If you need to see it.
We're following along on that quite well.
Okay.
Section 5.23.3.b, there are no other shared driveways on the site. It's serving an existing residence that's already there. We have Section 5.23-.3.e. Explain that, Troy. You guys are just going to work with them through that process?
So part of this is they have to provide a cost estimate and a escrow account and so forth to ensure that it's constructed. How this really works in reality is that they build the driveway prior to getting the land use permit for the house. That saves them to put up any money for an escrow or performance bond. Then they get the driveway in, fire department's okay with it, and then we go ahead and issue land use permit for the house. So it hopefully saves them money and headache. I know there's a little bit of delay in that the land use permit's held up, but if they elected they wanted to do the house much sooner, then we'd have to deal with getting the cost estimate and doing an escrow and so forth. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Section 5.23.4 looks like we have all the requirements on the drawing, other than the utility easements and those types of things. 5.23.4C. Again, this is another staff working with it. 5.23.6. This is just a reiteration of it's 2 parcels on a single driveway. Nothing specific there. They do have the T turnaround up at the top, and that is for emergency vehicles. Should we get fire trucks up in there, they need to get out without backing down the full way. The rest of the review letter is pretty much dealing with land division comments that are for our information only. Yeah. But it would appear as though the parcels as being proposed to be divided are fine. And all of our reviewing agencies are fine with it. The fire authority is fine with the length of the driveway, even though it exceeds the 600 feet permitted. But I think when the T turnaround went in, that opened you up to the longer length, and there were no issues there. Would appear as though we're working on a maintenance agreement review, but should be nothing there either.
Yeah, we used a previously approved maintenance agreement. I gave them a previously approved maintenance agreement, and they used that language verbatim with the exceptional legal descriptions and so forth. And I have sent that off to our attorney. I just don't see there being too much in the way of a concern with that.
Yeah. And those are, the purpose for that is you two, while you all get along really well, 25, 50 years from now, the new property owners at some point might not. Right. And we've got a legal document that takes care of that road that allows emergency vehicles to get in at any point in time. And if there are questions of maintenance, that's reviewed to that. So that's why we require that. Any questions for the applicant? Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so my question really isn't for the applicant, it's probably for Troy or the commission. Do we have any idea, I'm just curious, why 600 foot is the maximum length?
So I can just, generally, I don't know why that is the case here in Hartland Township, but that number is very common in a lot of communities elsewhere. And the thought with that came from almost like a fire safety standard of fire trucks have a hard time backing up and going down that far. creates concerns. The other thing, sometimes when you got one long cul-de-sac road, if anything were to happen where that gets blocked and you can't get beyond that, and there's no secondary means of access, or there's no other way for those people to get out. Those are some of the general concerns, but in reality, if you've got adequate turnaround, and there's 2 homes on this, the difference between 660 or 700 or 750 isn't, the fire department doesn't have concerns as long as they can adequately turn around.
And so I guess that would have been my guess too, you know, that just safely a fire truck has to be able to get in and out for the residents. I know that we had a shared driveway we looked at before, not far from the high school, and it seems that we might have had the same length question, and so it just makes me wonder where the 600 came from, and the fire department approved it, so, you know, no question about that at all. I'm just kind of curious about that. I don't know if it needs to be revisited, if going forward, if we're seeing this often.
Well, we could take a look at where the history of it is. Where did it come from? Because it does come up a lot. Are there any other questions for anyone? If not, you'll find a motion on packet page number 39, about, well, towards the bottom of the page there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, are the conditions, should we still read those, or is it?
In this one, yeah, I'm
Yes.
still waiting for the
Okay.
attorney in particular to comment on the
The main?
maintenance agreement.
Okay. Okay, so move to approve site plan 18-006 for a shared driveway on the property located at 5210 Fenton Road with the following conditions. This first one with the construction plan set, should I read?
Sure.
Okay, the applicant shall adequately address the outstanding items noted in the Planning Department's memorandum dated December 13th, 2018 on the construction plan set, subject to an administrative review by the planning staff prior to the issuance of a land use permit. The applicant shall comply with any requirements of the Township Engineering Consultant, Department of Public Works Director, and the Hartland Deerfield Fire Authority. The applicant shall revise the proposed maintenance agreement consistent with any recommendations of the township attorney. The applicant shall acquire the necessary permits from Livingston County as well as any other governmental agency.
I'll support that.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Grissom, second from Commissioner Kalani. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up, item 9, call to the public.
Second chance.
And we told many of you, you picked the right meeting. It's a short one. 10, planners report.
I do have a couple items.
Nothing more than 35, 40 minutes, is it?
I'll take these in reverse order, how I have them on my little list here. I have been told that the township is looking at installing a screen for these projectors. We just recently replaced the bulb on this one, and so this one is probably a little brighter and a little more clear. So the thought is they are going to do a screen, but only one. So I have been asked, which one would you want the screen?
Wow.
And
We need to commission a study.
So, and the thought is they may do away with the dual projectors and may just have one projector. But for right now, we're just focusing on the screen. And if you could pick which wall it went to.
I want that one. I look at that one. I like that.
Either one. It looks like the one on the right.
Okay.
It's bigger, too. For some reason, it appears bigger.
I think you can adjust that. I have no idea how you do it, but I think that that can be adjusted.
Now, if we could do ceiling to floor and wall to wall, like the Imagine,
I don't think we can
And
do
give
that.
the EMAX experience here? Okay,
I'll make a note of that.
all right.
The last comment I have is the Ordinance Review Committee has been meeting and discussing the architectural standards for light industrial and industrial. And we came up with, well, I kind of came up with a question as I was putting together some stuff, and kind of had asked the Ordinance Review Committee, we're going about this ordinance amendment to modify the architectural standards, but help me a little bit with what is the problem, what is the concern that we're trying to fix? So now the Ordinance Review Committee, 3 of them are here, so basically there's just 2 of you that are on the Ordinance Review Committee. So if you have any thoughts on what is it that is the concern? Is it the cost of the construction that we're looking at? Is it the trying to reduce the requirement for high-cost building materials? What was the ultimate concern or thoughts behind the reason for doing this?
My memory of it, and it has been a while since we touched on it, was to make sure that the architectural standards, we were comfortable with what they were. And if you were to take the standards we have and look at facilities that were built to those standards, is that what we want? We've never looked at them in the 14 years I've been doing this.
Okay.
So, or 13 years. So it wasn't as much changing them
So it could
as
be
making sure that we've reviewed them, that we're comfortable with them. That's my memory. And if we look at buildings that are built to those standards, do we say, boy, those are just too high, those are too low, those are about right? And then I think you can come back with pictures and examples and say, this is what you're getting, is this what you're comfortable with?
All right. Any other thoughts on that from anyone?
Not unless you want to mention the garage door issue as part of the,
So,
hear about that in committee or?
yeah, I can share that. I didn't know how much you guys wanted to get into that. So as I was looking at other ordinances from other communities, I was essentially finding a lot of communities for their industrial or light industrial didn't have architectural standards. So almost anything would have been deemed acceptable, or their standards really weren't that much different than our standards. So I started to ask questions about what is it that we're trying to accomplish here, and I had asked if the metal siding on garage doors makes that elevation of the building have much more metal siding than they might otherwise be permitted, and had asked the Ordinance Review Committee if we exempted the garage door but required the garage door to only be on elevations maybe not visible from the street. Is that something? Those were minor tweaks, I'll call them, to the ordinance, but I wasn't sure even if that was addressing what we were trying to look at. And if all we're really looking at is, do we like how buildings look that comply with our current standards, then I'm not sure we even need to do that. So.
Yeah, and I'd be a little concerned in an industrial district limiting garage doors in their location. I don't know that we can get into not visible from the road because...
Well, it's not a matter of it being visible, it's just that it wouldn't face
Yeah, I guess that would fall right in line with, give us some examples of what we would get with our ordinance, if we can. We can take a look at the facilities we have in town right now.
Or the one we approved on Clyde Road. It had a garage door that faced Clyde Road.
Right, so we could take a look at those even previously approved facilities and see how those fit within the program, and if we're comfortable with those, nothing changes.
Part of the reason we looked at it was because The building, one particular looking at was, it required, because of the requirements of the allotment of steel on one side, he was over his allocation, so he was non-compliant because they had to count the garage doors. So it would force that developer or that builder to add more brick to the side of the building or some other type of material to offset that aluminum from the door. I mean, is that something we want force the builders to do? Is that, so that's
yeah.
why we started looking at
Yeah,
exempting.
I couldn't answer the question just
Okay.
sitting here, but I think that's
Well,
a point that needs to come
yeah,
up when
I
you
wasn't-
bring it back.
Okay, I didn't really mean to pull an answer
Yeah.
out of you, but I just wanted
Yeah.
to know that's one of the issues we were looking at. We wanted to make sure we were heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that, as I stated, that was my thought of why we were doing this, but it had been on the list for quite some time, so I don't recall every detail. I would just say that my opinion, personal opinion of industrial facilities versus commercial facilities is that their needs are a little bit different, and they're in a different district for some of that reason, and I personally would not get as hung up on garage doors as I would the garage doors on M59. I just view them differently. That's me speaking. There's a whole another 6 people here. Well, usually.
I think we got our answer.
Yeah. Thank
That's
you
all
for
I have.
remembering.
Okay. Anyone else, anything?
I have 2 things.
Okay.
One is to try to respond to Tom's question about the 600-foot mark. I imagine if you go back in history when it was written, it probably had a lot to do with the length of fire hose they could run. 2 things, one of 2 things have to happen during a structure fire that far off the road. One is they'd have to have living out here in a rural area, there's no hydrants, so they'd have to set up a tanker shuttle, which would mean the truck would sit up next to the house, the engine would sit next to the house, and then there'd be a series of trucks bringing water down the driveway. The other option is you have the truck sitting at the house, and then you have tankers at the road, and they would run a hose down 600 feet. So you start, now that the dimension, the diameter of the hoses are getting larger, it is getting a little better with friction loss. So you don't have quite the limitation you had before. I think the 600 feet was probably the limitations of the friction loss of the hose is where it starts running into trouble. So just my guess, I bet it has something to do with it.
Yeah, it seems logical.
Yeah.
I just wonder if maybe we should, since the fire department didn't have an issue with that, maybe look at the other ones we've done in the past and maybe ask them what their thought is, given the changes in the equipment, you know, the larger hoses, the stronger pumps,
Yeah,
et cetera.
they have to consider mutual aid too, because everybody has to be able to adapt to work together, so.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting making it longer, but, you know, this one was, and I thought, well, it's a good topic, you know, curious why.
The other issue was, I had a little concern with these restaurants adding freezers, external freezers. I just hope it's not a trend. We have another restaurant in the area, I think, Troy, that's interested in doing the same thing, and there may be more. I understand why it needs to be done here, and we don't really, our ordinance doesn't really address it, but I'm concerned about it. We'd have a lot more control of the design and everything if we had it internal to the building and we had that up front with the initial site plan. And because now we're forced, in this particular one, we're forced to go with a material that's non-compliant today. But there's other ones that, and it's really a small area, so you got a little small site plan. My current concern is that, are we building smaller buildings and then say, hey, later we'll go back and add a freezer? For many reasons, you know, one is it's easier to manipulate the size of the building in the small lot that they're using, and then say we've got to squeeze this in now, later, and come back and do it later. It's just something to look at, I thought, in the future. And maybe it's just me, but it's just because I know there's more than one that's already talking about doing it, so.
Yeah, and I think the other one that's been spoken of is an older facility also. Right. I'm trying to recall, but I don't believe any of the restaurants that we've approved here in the recent years have had an external freezer. I think they've been on the inside. I'm trying to recall, but I believe they probably prefer them on the inside because then their staff doesn't have to go out one door, go out of the building, get into a freezer to come back, so.
I'm sure. Well, but the other thing is make sure they build them large enough when they build the building, so they don't have to add a smaller one later either. I mean, I think we've seen that before too.
I mean, I think that's a good question when we do have a restaurant come in, but we also want to encourage redevelopment of existing facilities and have the flexibility to allow for that, and having the ability to construct a freezer outdoors and be able to do that allows for that better use of that property than otherwise. Right. It's designed to not limit, but to allow for. I believe that when the original tenant, or when that was originally built, that there was no intention to, not have that in place. But the new tenant, it's necessary. So I think it's hard to figure that out. What you're saying is like, okay, are you building this big enough? Because what's
well, at least I'm talking about future development. I'm not trying to discourage reconstruction, remodeling, but if they are talking about a restaurant, let's make sure it's built internally. I mean, I think it's forced.
It's a good point.
Anyway,
I agree with you on that. I certainly agree with you on that. I think that when it comes to, are you building your kitchen big enough? Are you building, what are we going to have? Because what are your limitations? Because we do have a lot of existing facilities that are here, and they're being redeveloped, and now they have to look at how do they accommodate whatever use that comes in there, and what do we do in the circumstance where, let's just say the Rallies decides that they no longer want to locate in Hartland. Now you got this outdoor facility. Do we require them to remove it, the next tenant?
Well, and in this case, we're allowing an exterior material that we don't allow anymore.
Right. I mean, you're looking at the architectural issues, right?
Well, the longevity, because that's really the biggest reason we don't allow that building material. It doesn't have longevity.
The ethos you're talking about. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? I need a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn?
Support.
All righty, we have
Nobody wants to go home?
That would be, nobody wants to go home. So that would be
Bet they do.
Voight and Murphy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thanks. Have a great night.
Who's the young man? Is he a teacher or student?
Rebecca.
Got new students, seen anything signed?
Oh, DECA? Yeah.
Yeah, you can come to,
Really enjoyed working. Yeah, my son was in DECA.
Yeah, see, I never heard of